Okay, another question. Prior written notices. In Alabama, they're called NOPRs. Notice of proposal refusal to take action, which is a prior written notice, guys. Okay, so a prior written notice has to be provided to parents anytime there is something proposed by the school system or the IEP team that you may disagree with, or even there's consensus. There needs to be prior written notices to document the changes and also explain, let's say, the areas where you might disagree or things that you proposed that the school part of the IEP team is rejecting. And that needs to be provided to you so that we have documentation. Because remember, you have a 2-year statute of limitations in most states in this country. Louisiana and North Carolina is 1 year. All right. Now, that's why you have these things, is that we need to document this journey. You have an annual IEP meeting where that IEP is established or created, and it has a duration date that goes for typically a full school year or at most a calendar year, depending on where your IEP cycle starts and stops, okay? Within that time, we need to document exactly what's been going on. And the documentation can be had within, an amendment section within your IEP, and it could include prior written notices. And it could include both, an amendment section explaining what changes were made, if any, or what the meeting was about, and a prior written notice. But sometimes meeting minutes, if done correctly and has everything that it's supposed to have, and even amendment sections within the IEP itself, they can or could potentially serve as prior written notices, as has been determined by prior hearing officers and federal judges. Okay, so don't get locked into that it has to be on this form. If it has the proper information on it, could be on a cocktail napkin, guys. Could care less, as long as it has the proper information, and that is what is being proposed, why it's been accepted or rejected, and a date, and who made that determination. Okay, that's all the basic information. So in this situation, your IEP indicated a one-to-one aide support for your child, and then in October, your child falls at school because there was no one-to-one aide support as written in the IEP. Now, an IEP meeting was convened after that, where the LEA, in this case it was the actual special ed director, amends the IEP and removes that support. And your child, from my understanding, hasn't gone back to school since, because you have major safety concerns, and especially after removing the aid support. Now, why would she do something like that? Well, number one is, I know this particular school system and this particular school administrator. Number one is incompetent, and then another one is that she is I guess feathering her bed in hell. Just some of these. And I think some of it is it's the gross incompetence mixed with that ignorance that turns people into really bad leaders. And so if you're a bad leader anyway, meaning that you have some authority to say yes or no to things because you're in some position to do so, but you're not competent in the job that you're doing. And so instead of gaining that competence, which is the cure for ignorance, education is the cure for ignorance, then that's what bad leaders do. They just do shitty things like this. That's what they do. And then, then the district has to pay for it in the form of due process complaints. They have to pay attorney fees. And you sit there and you go, well, wouldn't the easier solution is just find competent people? Yeah, that's the easiest solution. And good leaders, and really doing training on how to be a good leader. I'm going to have another video about why we have a problem in education right now, and because that's a big one. But at the same time, if you look around our country, where the hell are examples of a good leader? And if you don't have good examples of good leaders, and all you have to mimic and replicate is what was currently existing in our society, then you can sort of see why things have not improved, okay? Because it takes a conscious effort to be a good leader. And, there is a formula for that. And so much of it's wrapped in a proper understanding of your role and then checking yourself and your arrogance. It's not about that. Good leaders are servers. Good leaders believe in service. That's what drives people to follow them. It's not the threats, and it's not the violence, and it's not the bullying. All right, that's sort of the thing people believe in now. It's to hide their ignorance and their incompetence. Okay. So why would somebody do that? Well, like I said, they're doing it because for some reason they believe that by changing the IEP, it somehow has some mythical power to undo what was written prior to that. Like I said, only an idiot would think that somehow amending your IEP would somehow erase, and just go imagination, and that didn't occur. So your only option really is to request mediation or to file a due process complaint on that issue. That's a big one. especially if the IEP team had already determined that that level of support was needed. But I can also tell you that, of course, I haven't seen how that's written in as far as your aide support. That district tends to be real clever on how they write aide support. And the other thing is that most of the time, guys, I'm telling everybody this, most of the time, they rob Peter to pay Paul. These promises and these things that they put in the IEP, if you guys had relationships with other families in your school, let's say especially self-contained environments, I think you'd end up finding out that they have overpromised resources to all of you. And it's just impossible stuff to where they've promised aide support for all of your kids, but yet there's one teacher and maybe one aide for 12 kids. Now, how in the hell is that going to happen? It doesn't. But see, they sort of rely upon the fact that special education parents are sort of fractured and they don't really communicate and they're not tied in with each other. They want that. They do not want a strong special education community on local levels at a school because by doing so, FERPA only applies to them. FERPA does not apply to you. You can talk to other parents about your IEP and what's in it and what's in their IEP if the parent wants to choose to share that information. And a lot of schools will sit there and try to tell parents that somehow this IEP is secret. And there are no rules on you as a parent. The rules are one-sided for the school people. But like I'm telling you, I don't know how the aide support was written in, but I'm telling you, I know your situation, and I know that there should be, especially during transitions and especially during specific points of the day, absolutely a designated person with your child. And so, this would be one to where I have a couple in that specific district to where it's very similar type of issues, and the level of support isn't there. The reason being is, quite frankly, is the excuse that I've been told is that they can't hire enough people. They don't have enough people. And so, like I said, they're just trying to rob Peter to pay Paul and make it through the end of the school year. And if they can, holding their breath and crossing their fingers that things don't happen and they don't get busted for it, then, it all works out, doesn't it? But you're left with few options because you do have a safety concern. And especially if the LEA came in with that arrogance and removed that, then you don't have a lot of options. You have to advocate.